Meet Ayisha Siddiqa. She's a climate advisor for the UN. She is there when, I guess, Greta Thunberg is unavailable, because that's what we have now. We have these maladjusted young adults that serve as the face people for these ghastly global villains like Klaus Schwab and his friends at the WEF and, by extension, the UN. Ayisha Siddiqa.
And I say this because the climate crisis is not passive. The climate crisis is not a result of natural disasters. It's actually man-made. It's a result of...
I'll say it again because I think they missed it.
The climate crisis is man-made. And it's not just man-made, it's white man-made. It is a result of capitalism, years of colonialism, years of racial oppression. And so, if you want to get involved, the way that we save our planet is when we protect the most vulnerable communities among us. And this includes Black trans women. This includes indigenous peoples. And this is why it includes children and young folk. Because when we protect them, then we can protect everybody else. All right?
Snap. She sounds as young, if not younger, than Greta Thunberg.
Kill Whitey. So if we protect Black men pretending to be women, then we save the planet from global warming. You're going to have to connect more dots for me, but that's not what Ayisha Siddiqa is in the business to do. She's in the business to help to gaslight a bunch of skulls full of mush, thank you, Rush Limbaugh, into being mindless political activists and spokeshumans, useful idiots for people that are actually pulling the levers and turning the dials, standing behind her in the shadows. Some of her tweets. The white man sits at the highest level of power in the world the same way he has killed, looted, and abused Black and brown people for profit. So has he the earth. White supremacy would rather take everything and everyone, including white people, with it than give up its hold. White supremacy going after white people. Who's left? I'm not an activist, she writes. I'm a killjoy. I'm what reminds white supremacy of its present-day wretchedness. It is my job to make clear that in the process of killing and consuming non-white, non-male bodies, the white man has brought life as we know it to the verge of extinction. Seems like somebody you could have a productive conversation with. Yeah. This is what, speaking of which, in terms of standing up armies of mindless, Marxist destroyers of Western civilization like this nitwit, that's what we're going to finance here in America. We're going to finance Biden's Climate Corps, this green army that he's putting together. That his budget, $7 trillion or so, what's a few $100 billion between friends, includes more than $8 billion for a domestic green political army, modeled after FDR's Civilian Conservation Corps. The Biden administration wants to mobilize more than 20,000 for a climate corps, some 50,000 by 2031. You have Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey from Massachusetts. They want to employ 1.5 million people in the climate corps over 5 years, which is greater than the number of enlisted in our military. Give you an example of what they're financing, because the money is going to left-wing political organizations that present as, environmental, the environmental vanguard. According to the Sunrise Movement, the Climate Corps can raise the bar for all employment, allows us to use the government as a way of designing our own society and settling new norms for the workplace. We'll offer a range of compensation and benefits such as housing, transportation, healthcare, childcare, educational credit, scholarships, student loan forgiveness, stipends, non-financial services, and benefits that address the barriers to unemployment and job retention, and other benefits as determined by specific program and participant needs. In the tens of thousands, maybe in the hundreds of thousands, if the blue sky vision can be turned into reality by these Marxists in Congress. It's not all fun and games listening to the Greta Thunbergs and this young lady prattle on. Behind them are people that mean business, like ending free societies in the West. For more on this, Steve Moore, economist and Govzilla author, joins us now. Steve, thank you for being with us as always.
Good morning, guys. Now, how do I sign up for one of these jobs that gives me free childcare, free food, free housing, free
I don't know your way.
I want one of those.
Yeah, back it up, white supremacist.
Yeah, you're a killer, looter, and abuser, and you don't care about the environment.
This is a humongous amount of money that they're talking about. This what do they call it? The Green Corps, whatever.
Climate Corps.
Yeah. Climate Corps. I mean, this is just one small piece of the puzzle. I want to remind you and your listeners that there's $350 billion of what I call the Green Energy Slush Fund in the quote so-called Inflation Reduction Act, and that's just money that $350 billion, not $350 million, $350 billion for programs like this. I mean, it is insanity. We're running a $2 trillion deficit, and they're spending money on all these left-wing groups. And incidentally, when I listened to what you were talking about, Dan, about all these new programs, have you noticed that there's one similarity between every single green anti-climate change agenda item? Grow government. More government control of our lives. This is not about saving the planet, folks. This is about growing the government and having government interference in every single thing that you do in your life, including what kind of car you can drive, because, by the way, in 5 or 6 years, you're not going to be able to buy a gas car.
And then back in the real world, even some enablers of this sort of lunacy are charting a different course, at least in part. I saw the Eva Peron of East Lansing, Gretchen Whitmer, has newfound affinity for nuclear power.
Yeah. I mean, look, if anybody who's rational and if you actually believe that, fossil fuels are evil, I don't. I think fossil fuels are what make us rich, using cheap, abundant fossil fuels. But if you had to give up fossil fuels, the solution that's the other thing. They come up with the most mindless, unworkable solutions to all these things. So, are we really going to run a $26 trillion economy on windmills? I mean, is there any rational person who believes that outside of the people in the United Nations? What you would do if you couldn't use fossil fuels any longer is you'd build, 50 nuclear power plants or 100 nuclear power plants. But they don't want to do that. They want to have control over your life. They want to tell you what kind of car you can drive. By the way, here's the other one. Have you heard about this, Dan, Amy? They want, 10-ton trucks, the long haulers. Yeah. They want 10-ton trucks that go across the country to be to operate on batteries. The technology doesn't even exist for that. How heavy are those batteries going to be? Another ton of battery? They're going to have to stop every 30 miles to recharge the battery. Oh, how about this one, Dan?
Not enough charging stations.
Yeah, the charging stations. They spent $7 billion in that Inflation Reduction Act on climate on charging stations. You know how many of them have been built, Amy?
How many?
Less than 20.
Oh, that's
well. That's because you don't have enough. You don't have enough enlisted in the Climate Corps yet, but that's going to change.
It's a $500 million for every charging station.
Yeah, I mean, you laugh about it, but I mean, but they are as serious as a heart attack about it.
They are. Of course, they are. I've said this many times, and I'm going to get a lot of hate mail when I say it again. But climate change is not a science, folks. This is not a science. This is the new religion of the left, and these are holy rollers. And anything to save the planet. By the way, I'm also angry this morning because did you see in the new budget, Dan? I've been meaning to mention this to you. We're re-enlisting in the World Health Organization, which is the organization that was the biggest cheerleader for climate change lockdowns. Everything the World Health Organization recommended turned out to be completely wrong, and we're refilling their coffers.
Yeah, well, I don't know why we don't just cut the check directly to the Chinese Communist Party rather than the WHO.
Yeah, why do we need an intermediary?
Yeah, right.
I mean, the thing that's so frustrating about this is that as I just said, folks, we're in debt. We're going bankrupt, and we're spending money like it's candy on things that have no relevance to, how we live and how we work and make America a more prosperous place. I mean, we're giving $250 million more to the World Health Organization after they screwed up everything.
Why would we reward them with that kind of cash or any at all?
I wanted to take some notice of this. We talked a bit earlier about some encouraging developments in revolt against the DIE orthodoxy, diversity, inclusion, equity in corporate America. But there was this other thing I didn't mention, and I want to get your reaction to, because this is important. There are studies that McKenzie did about a decade ago and over a few years that people like Mark Cuban lean on to say, it's not just ideological, this race identity politics in corporate workplaces. This is not ideological. It produces more productivity for the business. It creates a better work environment. It's a win-win for employers and employees. Well, it's interesting because two accounting professors from one from Texas A&M, one from North Carolina, just looked at this. And here's what they write. Very influential studies, McKenzie reports finding statistically significant positive relations between the industry-adjusted earnings before interest and taxes margins of large public firms that basically did the DIE program. That's what McKenzie found. They say, we do not find statistically significant relations between McKinsey's measures of executive racial ethnic diversity and essentially the profitability. In other words, the short of it is they could not repeat in their studies using the data that McKinsey used. They could not repeat the results that McKinsey obtained. And so it calls into question these foundational studies that are being used by DIE shills in corporate America like Mark Cuban. This is a big development. It's not going to get a lot of attention, but it deserves attention.
Well, most of the studies are finding that these programs, the ESG programs, the environment, radical climate change programs, and these, by the way, they always use these euphemisms like equity and inclusion. What they're really talking about is just racial quotas. And, so do racial quotas, do all these crazy environmental issues, do they help the performance of the companies? No. In fact, not only do they not help, they actually have a negative effect. So last year, in 2023, you know what the worst performing stocks were? Solar power, wind power. You know what the best performing stocks were, Dan?
Those that are not on the government dole. Yeah.
Oh, other than that, oil and gas. So they're divesting in the companies that have the highest return, and they're buying the stocks of the companies that have the worst return. So you're sugarcoating this. Actually, it's not that. It would be one thing if they had a neutral effect. These programs don't have a neutral effect; they have a negative effect. And the point that we make all the time is, wait a minute, the purpose of a company. I know I'm going to sound like an evil monopolist here. The purpose of a company is to make a profit for your shareholders, right? And so why are you putting politics over the returns of the company? And by the way, if the company doesn't make a profit, somebody needs to tell this to Joe Biden. Those evil companies are making all these profits. If a company doesn't make a profit, it's not in business. And if it's not in business, it can hire workers. By the way, I wanted to ask you one thing, Dan and Amy. Are you guys going to $20 an hour on the fast food restaurants like California?
We'll get there. We're first going to attack tipped employees, and then we'll get to $20 an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see everybody in California? All the fast food restaurants are laying off all their workers,
right,
and raising prices.
$20. Yeah, that really helps workers.
I wanted to get your reaction to this too. It turns out that despite Biden's promises of just cleaning up tax collection. And we're going to go after the millionaires and billionaires. 63% of the new audits were taxpayers with incomes of less than $200,000.
Because that's where the money is.
Bingo.
The money is in the hands of the middle class. Obviously, they're going to go after. That was one of the great deceits of hiring 800,000 or 80,000 new IRS agents. They don't need 80,000 IRS agents to go after Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and people like that. They want to go after middle class people who make $75,000 to $150,000, and they're coming after you. And it is this is the time of year when, incidentally, you can't even make heads or tails of what we pay our taxes. We try to do it legally, honestly, and Amy, when we're done, we don't even know if we paid the right amount of taxes. I mean, and then we get a bill. The other day, I'm not making this up, we just get a letter saying, "Oh, you owe us another $12,000." We're like, why?
Yeah.
They didn't even say why. Just send us another $12,000. And I asked my wife, "Well, what did we do wrong?" I don't know. I mean,
every time you send $12,000, a member of the Climate Corps gets his wings. Steve Moore, Wall Street economist and Govzilla author. Thanks as always, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll get my check right into the IRS because I wouldn't want to put a Climate Corps worker out of it.
No.
Exactly.
Do your part. Step up. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Listen, with everything happening in our world today, it can all feel so complicated. But maintaining your home shouldn't be. For 53 years, Tyson Roofing has been primarily serving DeKalb, Kane, and